This is an RCA VMT-400. It's Hitachi made from about late 86, early 87. And it has digital effects. Now this is not a high-end model that I can tell. It's not hi-fi or even linear stereo. The controls are pretty basic. I mean, standard for an RCA VCR of its time, line in, manual tracking. And it looks like it's a 3-head, which is kind of interesting. You can see there's the single head over here, and you can see the width of it. If you can see that there. It's a single head. And then on the other side, it's a double head. So this side's like a 4-head, and this side's like a 2-head. And it really plays like a 4-head. It's actually got pretty decent picture overall. It's got some issues. When I bought it, the power supply, this transformer was completely unsoldered. These two fuses here and here, I'm not going to touch them because it's live, were missing. And you can still see, like, the whole power supply isn't really attached. I just attached these grounds just because, but everything was left open. So someone was clearly in here. And it does have an issue that might be power supply related. You'll see it in a bit. So the real reason I bought this is for the digital video effects. And it seems like a real cheesy feature that they tried out, which apparently came from Hitachi. This, again, is a rebranded Hitachi. So Hitachi had a higher end model with these features, and then RCA released this one. And it's got the same controls on the remote, which luckily came with this. It's all in perfect shape, works and everything. So I mean, it needed a little cleaning. This whole thing needed cleaning. It was pretty disgusting. So cleaned all the transport, the heads, but I haven't really done anything else to this. Nothing at all. This thing has 7 belts, and it seems to work okay. I think they need replacing. I'll show you the problem on SLP with it. So it's got a nice indicator that the tape's in there and everything. So right now I have the line in. So like most RCAs at this time, you can switch between the tuner and line in. And the tuner control is real similar of TVs and VCRs of this era. Select lock allows you to go into select mode. Then you can go channel up and down and select add for each channel you want. Then you lock it, and now you just have the channels that you added, which is totally useless now in 2019, so we'll go back to line in. So on the line in, I have a digital converter box hooked up. It's just a cheap modern RCA. And this TV is probably not the best one to use, but it's nice and small, so it works for this. It gets a lot of interference from the converter box, and it's got a really bad buzz that needs to be fixed in the tuner. So I'll just turn that down for now. But yeah, so let's... And again, I've done nothing to this other than just clean the outside and the heads and everything. So if I hit pause, well, I'll hit fast forward first to get us to a scene. So this is what the 3 heads are doing. Instead of a 2-head model where you'd get just, half the screen would be filled with a tracking bar because the heads really wouldn't line up. This has perfect scanning. And if you watch when I hit scan, it kind of freezes for a second. And same thing when I let go. So this actually is part of the digital controls. So if I hit pause, you get a perfect still image. And the thing is, if I were to go and touch the head while this is running, nothing. So that's like a digital frame buffer in here, which is pretty neat for late 86, early 87. So if I go and I hit play, it'll let me step forward. And if I hit it again, it'll kind of go into a slow mode, I believe. There we go. Again, perfect still images. And then if I hit play again, it'll start playing. So going through these, first one, picture in picture. Now I've got my digital cable box or digital receiver box in the corner. And if I hit the picture in picture again, it'll swap. So now I've got the movie in the corner, the VHS in the corner. I can hit pause, pause the movie. Or I can go and I can change the channel. And if I hit picture in picture again, it just goes back to the movie. Weirdly, it unpaused for a second there. Let's go back to playing. So that was the first button on here. Second button, freeze, pretty straightforward. It just does the same thing as pause, but while the movie continues playing. So it uses the frame buffer to pause even though the movie's still playing. And then hit freeze again. The next one is completely pointless. DVE, which I think is digital video effects. That's what it says on the front of the machine. First one is a pixelated effect. I don't know why anyone would use this unless they're trying to make fancy home movies. The next one looks kind of cool. I don't know what this is called, but I've seen this in a lot of photo editors and stuff like that. It almost looks like a really low depth GIF from the 90s. So I'll go back to normal. And the fourth button has to do with the picture in picture. So like a lot of TVs in the 90s when picture in picture became popular, you can move it around. So it's a pretty neat feature for a VCR from the mid-80s. And again, I couldn't find any info on this unit online other than one newspaper article from the Chicago Tribune, which I'll link, which talks about this as a brand new machine coming out. And well, the article's from October 86, so I don't know when this actually came out. So here's where we get into the problems with it. This tape is obviously recorded in SP. It's a pre-recorded movie. So if I pop this out and just grab a random old tape recorded in SLP, or EP as it was called on later models, you'll see the issue. It has no tracking control whatsoever on the slower tape speeds. And I think this could be a bad belt, but it could be a power supply issue too, if the voltages are starting to go bad. And you know, with how old this is, and I know a lot of these Hitachi models had pretty rocky power supplies. I remember a lot of bad caps on these things in the 90s. It very well could be the power supply. So playing an SLP tape, and the tracking just does that. Just sort of flashes. And no matter what I do to adjust it, go from one side to the other, nothing. So I don't know if that's a wobbly tape speed, but it doesn't seem likely because the audio, well, it's going to buzz if I turn this up, but the audio has no change at all. It's pretty flat when I play it on a modern TV. So I don't think it's the belts or the tape speed. It really seems like a power supply issue. And believe it or not, I have another RCA from the late 80s, so a lot newer than this one, that has the same problem. Plays SP tapes beautifully, and SLP just can't lock the tracking. And so because the tracking is all wonky on this one, if I hit pause, even though it's got the digital frame buffer, you'll see it's not crystal clear. Sometimes it'll catch it. Well, now it's working fine. Ah, of course now it's working. There we go. Sometimes it'll catch it on that bad tracking moment. So normally I think if this machine is working properly, you'll never see any artifacts like this when it pauses. It's got a pretty clean picture normally. And fast forward scan. I mean, this looks the same as a 2-head VCR on SLP. And rewind. And of course the rest of the features are pretty standard. XPR is if you wanted to hit record, like an express record, XPR, and you wanted to just record and say, okay, this show's on right now, I'm right in front of the VCR, it's going to be on for an hour. So you hit start, and then at length, and it'll dial in the amount of time you want to record. So it's kind of like setting a timer record, except you're there when it's starting. Counter, it's got the standard 4-digit counter reset. And then the rest of the controls are on the remote, which I actually haven't played with yet. This is when things were starting to go to all remote control and you couldn't really do some things on a VCR without the remote. So if I hit program, we've got all the clock controls and the timer, and really that's it. It's pretty early for the on-screen programming. I can go to clock set, punch in the time, we'll do AM, just enter random numbers here. It's the future. And then hit end to program. Well, there was no end, but I hit program again and it seemed to do it. It's weird, this really seems like the original remote, but I had to hit program, not end. So, the clock is set now. And yeah, it's, other than the digital video effects, it's a pretty basic VCR. It's old enough that you have 3 tape speeds, which is nice. I really miss LP. I just captured some footage off this, and I noticed that there's a high-pitched whine in the audio. So I'm thinking that's probably related to the tracking problem on SLP. And I got thinking, there's normally a shield here. So you look at these 2 screw holes here, and probably one of these grounds, probably maybe sitting on top of this post here. But there's usually a shield that goes across here, and definitely across the power supply. So the lack of shield might be causing a problem on here. Again, not really too sure, but you'll hear the sound on the encode. It's a kind of like a high-pitched motor whine. And yes, I did try grounding this post here and this whole assembly to those grounds just to make sure it wasn't anything floating, but no change.
You need a favor from me?
She's cold, Bernsey.
She has.
I thought you never took sides.
What are you getting at?
I'm doing it for her.
I hope you're not starting to mistake him for a real person, Mrs. Levitz.
You're out of your league here, Bernstein.
Well, now, just how you think. You're going to get a realer picture.
For a more impossible picture, they'd have to notice.
The things.
You're a hacker! 30 seconds!
Yes, I am. Visitors to you here somewhere.
I need the event to capture the public eye. I gotta get the moment.
From Universal Pictures.
Everybody loves to have their picture took. Everybody.
The Public Eye.
Give it a shot, Bernsey!
Oh, okay, class, settle down now. But most important is, of course, a video library. Yes, building a library of favorite videos.
We can talk about our kids.
Kids!
Yeah.
School,
Yeah.
education, sex ed.
Yeah, nope. Okay.
God, hockey.